Hi, welcome to another episode of the House of Health podcast. I'm Dr. Anita Raja, and with me today I have Dr. Sobia Arshad, who is a hormone specialist. She's a consultant endocrinologist, and as you know, we're very passionate about busting all misinformation that is making rounds on the internet. So we've got Dr. Sobia here to answer our questions today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for.
Dr. Sobia, we get lots and lots of patients at the House of Health that come because they're struggling with fertility. When it comes to endocrine causes of infertility, what are the few that we need to look out for?
Endocrinology is the main part of fertility because all the menstrual hormones are required at a certain level to be pregnant. So if someone is having an investigation for fertility, the first thing to do is check the complete hormonal profile. I'm sure we have mentioned many times that the master gland is pituitary gland in our brain. It's a small pea-sized gland. It's a master gland that produces all the parent hormones or precursor hormones, and they go and then act on ovaries and thyroid, all the other glands, and then they produce. And we need to have the right amount of all these hormones to successfully conceive.
And, we get many women who are worried about a condition called PCOS. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this condition is and what it stands for?
So a PCOS, or polycystic ovarian disease, I quite like talking about it actually because I see lots of young women become very scared here at clinic because they think, oh, this is it, they're never going to have children. I really want to start by saying that's not true. It's not a diagnosis of infertility. You can have subfertility. So you may take a bit longer to conceive. And if you have PCOS, maybe you want to start planning a bit sooner than when you want to have a baby and not delay it too late. But you can conceive, but it is subfertility, and how we diagnose it. It's a combination. It's a syndrome. So we have to have a few things. And there are three things we look at, and you need to have 2 out of 3 things we diagnosis. So the first is in the name, polycystic ovarian disease. So there needs to be cyst in the ovary. If 12 cysts in the ovaries or more, then you just do ultrasound, you see, oh yes, they are cystic disease. But that doesn't automatically mean that they have PCOS. They need to have at least 1 out of the remaining 2. And out of those 2, 1 is irregular periods. If they have irregular periods, that means the hormones are fluctuating, the cycle is not regular. And the second is the manifestation of extra hormones. So they can have hirsutism, lots of extra hair on the face, or acne, or receding hair, and things like that, which just show that you have more testosterone. So if you have clinical presentation of that, irregular periods, you do the scan, you can diagnose. You don't need to do any further investigations. Or when you have a PCOS, then the myth is that, oh, I can't lose weight. Yeah, I'm sure you want to know all the time.
I did.
I have PCOS, I can't lose weight. It's very challenging to answer that because it's like catch-22. It's like chicken and egg situation. Who came first, chicken or egg? I agree that it is slightly difficult to lose weight because of this.
Of course.
But the best treatment is weight reduction. And I tell my patients that it's not a lifelong diagnosis. It's not that someone has written that you have PCOS, now you can't do anything about it. It's not like that. Yeah, if you lose significant amount of weight, you can reverse it or make it very milder. The problem comes when you have a slim PCOS patient. The slim PCOS patient is difficult because they're already slim. What else are you going to say? Then you can work on how to reduce the insulin resistance, how to improve polycystic ovarian disease. And there's lots of focus treatment. So when there's a PCOS, the question to ask a patient is, what do you want? Yeah, because not everyone wants the same thing.
Of course.
Some want just help with the hair or acne, you treat that. Some needs help with the regularity of menstruation, you help that. Some need help with fertility, and you help that. So the treatment needs to be very goal-focused.
Yeah, and there are two buzzwords on the internet at the moment. There are lots of health influencers who've got no medical degrees but giving a lot of advice on how to get over insulin resistance. So, and there's a lot about metabolic syndrome. So, tell us what these things are and how we can actually combat them.
So they're all cousins.
Yes.
They are family members. So PCOS, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, pre-diabetes, diabetes, they all are one family, right? If you don't control that, you will then develop diabetes. What metabolic syndrome is, again, a very clear criteria that you need to have this, this, and this, and then you have metabolic syndrome. That adds the 5 things. You need to have 3 out of them. You need to have borderline high sugars, borderline high cholesterol. You need to have borderline high blood pressure, and then you can have metabolic syndrome. And insulin resistance is again one of my favorite topics to talk about, because where the resistance is coming from.
Yeah,
It's in the name. It's an insulin
resistance.
But why are we worried about insulin resistance? And the way I always ask my patients, what do you think in insulin resistance? Your insulin is low or your insulin is high?
Yeah, what are you resisting?
Yeah, but what are you resisting? So basically, what insulin resistance means that you have a lot of insulin and it's not effective. And what is stopping them to work? Now, what is stopping them to work? I guess it's your fat cells.
But the thing is that, with people who ask these questions, I guess there is insight that they know that weight loss, again, like you said, all of these conditions are cousins. They're sisters. Pre-diabetes, diabetes, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, you name it, diabetes. I mean, what is going to help? Weight loss. What is causing it? Weight gain. What is the problem? Fat cells.
Yeah, because
Excessive.
fat cells are least, read or researched.
I agree.
It's a very, very important organ. So when you have extra fat cells, they're not just sitting there. They do a lot of stuff. And what they do is they produce hormones. And these hormones are enemies of your insulin. So it doesn't allow insulin to work. Say, we don't let you work. So insulin says, please let me work. I'm going to reproduce. I'm going to go higher and higher and higher. And it keeps increasing. Finally, it can open the door and get in. And that's what insulin resistance is. And if it increases, then you develop diabetes. And how you can help that is by weight reduction.
Okay.
And the other things that really work is intermittent fasting.
So intermittent fasting is something that you're very passionate about. You love intermittent fasting.
Myself, I love it.
Yes, I do intermittent fasting. I've been doing it for 4 years since I had my youngest son. And there is a lot of good stuff on the internet around intermittent fasting. Tell us more about it.
So I'm going to tell you in very simple terms what intermittent fasting does. So people who have high cholesterol, they think that if they will not have fat or they reduce fat in their diet, that will reduce the cholesterol or triglycerides, which is metabolic syndrome. It doesn't work like that. It's actually carbohydrates that increases your triglycerides. Now, what carbohydrates do to insulin? Insulin is only produced for carbohydrates. Right? So the second you have a carbohydrate,
Yes.
a drop of milk,
Yes.
the carbohydrate, your insulin
Spikes. Yeah.
So when your insulin is spiking all the time, it becomes faulty and you develop insulin resistance. So when you're fasting and you're not eating for 18 hours, the body says, oh my God, she's not going to give me anything. I'm not going to go in storage. I need to use it because you are still walking, you're still doing your
Of course, yeah. You're still breathing. You still
you have a basal metabolic rate. So you need calories for that. So where the calories are going to come from? They come from the stored ones, from your liver, from your cholesterol. So that will come down. And when you eat an intermittent fasting, again, I say when you're eating in that window, you don't have to restrict your calories too much, but you have to restrict your carbs. So don't be too frank with carbs.
I agree. I agree.
The only carbs that I never say don't eat this.
No, but don't be frank. I like your terminology.
Don't be frank.
Cautious. It's very cautious.
Mindful.
Yes.
And one kind of carbs that I do say, please don't do it if you want to lose weight is a liquid carb. Any sugary drink and alcohol has lots of carbs in it. So if when you're having a sugary drink, is this lots of carbs goes in direct into the body. Body doesn't know what to do
Yes.
with it. It constantly changes it, automatically turns into cholesterol and sugar, and get stored because you cannot use at that speed. If you have complex carbs, body will digest it, break it down, and by the time you will be able to use some of it, fiber, and then the fiber will will be excreted. So avoiding processed carbs and liquid carbs and intermittent fasting. It's very, very
Okay. And tell us more about, people who are now going to be fasting in Ramadan, because the month is just around the corner. And if they are sort of diabetic, what sort of advice would you give them in terms of the diet that they should be having when they break their fast, when they open their fast?
very good question. As as sunnah as well, that you should have a sehri. You should always have a proper breakfast before starting your fast, and that's what they should do. And eat less in iftar time, and see their diabetes specialist and get their medication reviewed because there will be some change required. People who are just on diet control diabetes, they don't have to do anything. People who are already doing intermittent fasting, they don't do anything. But if you were not doing it, especially if you're on insulin, you're on dapagliflozin and new drugs, or weight loss injections, then you need to seek and you need to have sustained it. And I cannot obviously give you.
Of course not.
All of them, but in a nutshell, you take the dose at half of it at the breakfast and some of it at your iftar time when you have eaten. And insulin, you really cut it down because you don't want to have hypoglycemia. But in this modern age, you should have zero hypoglycemia. I'm really against hypoglycemia. So if you have a hypoglycemia, that is a negligence. Because people don't understand that one hypoglycemia, the effect it has on the brain is equal to a mini.
Yes.
People just say, "Oh, I had hypo. I had a bar of chocolate and I had a juice, and I'm fine." We shouldn't minimize the adverse effect.
100%, especially if you're aging and it gives you the same effect as, like you said, like mini stroke, where you can become a bit forgetful, confused, and it has a long-lasting effect on that. So people who are from the subcontinent love having their, opening their fast with fried foods. What sort of advice would you give them?
I said, only two things I say: don't do it. For everything else, I say portion control.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask them to don't have food, but I do preach about changing vocabulary.
Okay.
And not finding comfort in samosas, and it's not about comfort. Don't associate that with that your life is only fun if you're going to have this. But eat in moderation, portion control. If you want a healthier lifestyle, then start with protein. Your plate should look like that you have a big portion of protein. Any kind of protein. Vegetarians have their protein options as well, like tofu or paneer or whatever they like eating. If you're meat lover, any kind of fish, meat, chicken, and then a big portion of veggies and salad, and very little carbs. So carbs should be for tasting. And the rest of protein and veggies and salad should be for eating.
Fantastic. I mean, I think you've answered most of our questions today. In the end, is there anything you want to tell our viewers?
I think I really want to add that I want to share this. I read it just a couple of weeks ago. It's one of my very nice colleague and friend who writes in an article in Times. And he wrote a very beautiful line. He said, human beings have tendency, people have tendency to overestimate what they can achieve in a year, but they vastly underestimate what they can achieve in a decade. So whatever steps you're taking, make it consistent, small and consistent, and you will be in a better health 10 years down the line than trying to find quick fix and magic and make me slim in 1 week. Don't do that. Develop good habits and teach good habits to your children.
Fantastic. It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Sobia. Thank you, guys. See you soon.